Do you struggle with aggressive plays like this? We've all been there where the enemy is pushing fast and sometimes just straight up rushing with seemingly no game plan, yet no matter how foolish these plays seem, you still find yourself struggling to punish them. If this is you, you've come to the right video. We're going to break down exactly why these plays work and more importantly, how exactly you can adapt your play and be able to stop them in their tracks. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Jumping right into things, if you come to this video, one of the biggest problems that you're probably struggling with is stopping a full rush. What this is when the attacking team straight up pushes into a site as 5 and overwhelms the defenders who are on that site. You may have heard that rushing is a bad idea, but then you may also have had this thought where hey, the defenders have to split up on each site, so if we go as 5, we should have the numbers advantage. The numbers advantage is definitely in favor of the attackers with a full rush, but only if the defenders let the attackers get into the site for free without putting up a fight. One of the main ideas with playing on the defender side is stalling out the attackers as long as possible. This buys time for not only you to set up a counterattack, but also for your team to process the information and rotate quickly so that the 5 versus 2 scenario you were initially thinking about comes closer in numbers when the attackers start to enter the site. There are multiple ways that you can stall a team out. One of the easiest ways is to have agents with abilities that are specifically made to slow players down and be a hindrance. Without a doubt, the Sentinels are the agents that really shine at this kind of play, and particularly Cypher and Killjoy are some of the most annoying agents to have to play against due to their trickery and ability to always keep you on your toes and guessing how they're going to set up the site. Some of the most annoying positions that these two agents can place their abilities on is on Ascent, where low level traps can be placed right outside the A site with a cage on top, or placing a Killjoy turret on top of the barrels in defender spawn to slow down a push from B garage. The latter is extremely annoying to deal with, especially on pistol rounds, since this position only showcases the turret's head, making it a much harder target to hit, along with the pistols requiring multiple shots to eliminate it in the first place. If setups are not your thing, then Sage is a much easier sentinel that you can play. Her ability kit is extremely straightforward for slowing players down. First, wall up the choke point that the enemies are rushing. Once the wall is broken, throw a slow orb to slow them down. Once your slow orb goes down, chuck your second slow orb to slow them even further than you already further slowed them. Try saying that line 10 times fast. You can also peek enemies if you hear that they are stuck in your slows and are still running through. If this is the case, they'll be much easier targets to hit, but make sure that you're only doing minute peeks so you don't end up facing a ton of bullets from multiple players. Isolate them one by one and then back out after a pick or two. Honestly, this is a bit of a no-brainer, but we have to put it here at the beginning because having a sentinel is crucial for slowing down a push. Not only can they delay time to allow your teammates to rotate over, but they are also able to do this single-handedly, meaning the rest of your team can lean more towards the other areas of the map. What we commonly find is players will slow down their play drastically and some will even back out completely as they realize that they couldn't get into the site as fast as they wanted to. Having a sentinel drastically opens the door for ways to slow down aggression and make these players think twice, so make sure that you do have one on your team in case the enemy does like to play fast and they're useful to have overall. Moving on, one of my favorite ways to stop aggressive pushers in their tracks is by being aggressive myself. Aggressive plays tend to work mostly because the other team gives them space to be aggressive. If a team full sends it to a site and you don't do anything to try to stop it, then they'll likely take the site. In this scenario, the defenders are giving too much room and space for the attackers to do whatever they want. And just to briefly mention, we're talking a lot about aggression from attackers, but we will also discuss aggressive defenders as well shortly in this video. Countering aggression with aggression is one of my favorite ways to fight back, and if done correctly can pay off extremely well. Flashes are one of the best abilities to help you be aggressive yourself. When coordinating with a teammate by your side, you're likely to absolutely dominate the aggression versus aggression battle. Let's take the A site on Ascent for example. If a teammate is running straight through A long to the site, a common counter that players will try to do is use a flash or blind such as with Omen and Phoenix to force them back. This is okay to do alone, but likely the flash isn't going to last long enough for you to get more than one kill. Along with that, if you aren't one of the best aimers, it may take you even longer to get the kill, and by that point the rest of the enemy team will regain their vision and will be able to trade you out. With a 1-for-1 trade, the enemy team is likely going to keep on pushing and you will only have delayed them for a brief moment. Now if you already know the enemy likes to make this sort of play or likes to have players pushing hard on A long, you can have an extra teammate here initially to help you get those frags. With 2 players on board and pushing off a flash, the odds of you guys getting additional frags or quicker frags is drastically higher. This means more enemies killed and a much lower chance that the enemy will want to continue pushing through after losing so many players and being at a man disadvantage now. They'll be forced to play much more slower and much more passively, and you will now have more room to breathe and likely take the round based on the number odds. This is one of the many options to counter aggression with your own. Team-based aggression is going to be your best friend here. There are multiple different team-oriented peaks and plays that you can utilize, and we have a ton of guides on these specific types of techniques on our website at skillcapped.com, so make sure to check that out in the description below. Continuing forward, a full team rush off the bat isn't the only way that players can be aggressive. In particular, there are likely going to be 1 or 2 players on the other team who like to go on their own solo missions. These are the type of players that like to try to create space on their own and essentially carry their team. They may play aggressively both on attack and defense, and if your team isn't ready for it and the enemy is confident, your team could get picked off and obliterated for multiple rounds over. Now this kind of aggression is somewhat trickier to deal with, particularly if the enemy is aggressively pushing out, but doing it in a sneaky manner where they are walking into choke points early into rounds without you really knowing until they peek the position that you're in. Now there are 2 particularly effective ways to deal with both solo or duo aggression. One of the best ways is through information gathering, which is best done with initiators such as Sova, KO, and Sky. However, a lot of agents and abilities can achieve this to some degree, such as with Raze's Boombot or Cypher's Spy Cam. The idea here is to get an idea of where the player is before they make a play on you or your team. If you know ahead of time that an aggressive play is about to come from the enemy, you can better prepare for it by pre-aiming a certain location, placing an extra ability, or calling out to your team that someone's about to go for a play and you want them to come over and help. With either of these moves, you're thinking an extra step ahead, you're preparing ahead so that when the aggressive push comes, you'll be ready for it. You can also mix this information gathering with an aggressive counterplay like we talked about earlier. For example, if we use Sky's Trailblazer and found an enemy nearby, we can follow that up with an aggressive flash to peek them. This ensures our ability is effective and useful to gaining an upper hand along with stopping those pesky aggressive individual pushes. Next, switching up positions may seem like common sense, but it still appears to be heavily underrated and heavily underutilized to catch aggressive players off guard. Especially at the lower ranks, we found time and time again that a player will stick to the same spot and then get ratted out and picked off by the same player who takes advantage of such a habit. This makes a player way too predictable and thus more easily killable. A good way to switch things up is by playing more forward or further back. For example, if you are playing in mailroom for most rounds, you might want to change things up by going into vents. This angle still gives you vision of essentially the same areas while keeping the players guessing. Another option is backing up into the corner of heaven. For both of these options, especially if the enemy has been led to believe you'll play the same position as previously, the simple switch up can catch them by surprise. While they try to preemptively peek into mailroom thinking that you'd be there again, these different angles will allow you to peek with confidence to eliminate them instead. Case in point, keep the enemies guessing and don't make your plays too predictable. All the above tips apply to all aggressive scenarios, however we split them up into the ones that we found to be most effective against scenarios that were a bit more specific. These next few tips are equally as successful with any aggressive scenario and will definitely make enemies second guess themselves before they continue pushing through. So stacking a site. This is a bit of a last resort move, and it's particularly for players who will rush the same site over and over knowing that it's been working. If a team is constantly pushing through one site or position, you're going to want to put more players there to increase your numbers game. It's a bit of a desperation play to be forward with you, but if nothing else is working, sheer numbers may be the answer, especially if you know the enemy is going to push through that area again. This will ideally even the odds more and help to give a fighting chance of stopping the enemies from getting too comfortable and thinking that they can one-trick a position for the entire half without any repercussions. After that, we have 2 of the most annoying weapons in the game, the Operator and the Judge. The Operator has much more long-term usage for a match compared to the Judge, but both can be equally effective depending on the scenario that you're in. The Operator's ability to scope deep into long-range angles and grab picks early on is crucial to preventing aggressive plays. More often than not, if a player sees an Operator at hand, they'll try their best to avoid facing them, especially if you just used it to pick a player off. If you constantly switch up your positions just like we talked about in an earlier scenario, you'll be able to shine with the Operator and get those initial picks before the enemy can even take a step onto the site. Again, the longer range angles that you can use with the Operator allow you to spot enemies early on while being a very hard target to hit. The Judge is utilized for much more specific scenarios, and as an added bonus, it tends to be really good at tilting aggressive players to oblivion. With how narrow some of these corridors are in Valorant, the Judge really shines on defense at stopping those who want to overstep their boundaries and push hard. For example, nearly every choke point can be held with the Judge at hand on bind. You can camp under hookah, right outside shower or A short, or even at octagon. All these positions and much more will put players within range to be 1 or 2 shotted by the Judge. If you have enough time, you can also steal a weapon afterwards and go for more, or again, the Judge can instill quite a bit of fear into enemies and make them slow down drastically. If you haven't been using these two weapons too much, we highly suggest that you do so, especially against aggressive teams and especially with the operator, which is much more useful for multiple rounds. That's all we have for this video. We hope you took something away from it and learned from today's guide. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides just like this one with one goal in mind, helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next. I'm Dr. Zora, and good luck out there.